Unleash your potential. It's your time to shine.
We are now witnessing a new era that everything is now possible. With advanced chemistry, with advanced peptide use, we are now seeing that new trend, the off-season use of the metabolic modulators like SLUP and MOTS-C, especially those two peptides. So I always trying to show you the other side of the coin. I'm not here to tell you that this is bunk, but I'm telling you the other side of the coin, and it's you to decide. So welcome to the video, which we're going to talk about lipolysis versus anabolism. At the start, let me just tell you logically, once we think about lipolysis and anabolism is building more muscles, and lipolysis is breaking down the fats and fat oxidation, which means that this signal is the total opposite of that signal. So if I have a fiber and I'm trying to push in the other ways, I think it's going to be breakdown, right? Logically, it will not be able to happen, no matter what will be the reason. So either one of them gonna overpower one and take it in that side, or the other one can overpower the others or take it in that side. So my perspective here is to tell you that you can't build muscles at the same rate as you can build it without those peptides. And I know that you can accumulate a lot of fat and you're using those to attenuate the fat accumulation, but still, would you really want to do that? But let's just start to unpack what we have in this video. So we're gonna start with the classic definition of the bodybuilders seen for the PEDs, which are androgens, growth hormone, and IGF-1 for sure. Okay, so let's take it that way. Let's take it that the androgens, they are a signaling for AGF1, AKT, and mTOR. So if people don't know about AKT, which is a pathway that is crucial for intercellular signaling network that regulates cell growth, survival, proliferation, and metabolism. It also activating signals from growth factors and hormones, leading to phosphorylation and activation of downstream proteins like the mTOR C1 and GSK3 beta, which in turn promotes the cell division and prevents the programmed cell death, or what they call it apoptosis. All of those are very critical pathway to can push to reduce myostatin, increase satellite cell activation. It can improve the nitrogen retention. It can boost the protein synthesis, and also can reduce the protein breakdown, especially the muscle protein synthesis and the muscle protein breakdown. You can have an androgens that can drive up the signal to can push more, and it can gain more of the size. This is your choice, or this is what you aim for from an off season, right? So you are pushing towards hypertrophy and more muscles. We are not talking about the on season or the prep season that you are trying to lose as much fat as possible, and sometimes you can sacrifice a slight of your size to can be peeled on the stage. Okay, so with that being said, if we're gonna move towards the growth hormone is in between, like it's a lipolytic agent, and also it can stimulate growth because growth hormone can gonna then convert it in the liver to IGF-1. The growth hormone has some insulin antagonism, and also it can drive the IGF-1, which can be helpful towards the accumulation of lean mass and also lean mass preservation. Okay, so this is our signal for anabolism. What about the other? What about the other signal, which is the other peptides? Let's have a brief of those peptides for people that they are just first time to hear about it. The SLUP, which is SLUPP332, is a synthetic ERR, which is estrogen related receptor agonist, and it is an exercise mimetic. It can promote the mitochondrial biogenesis, oxidative metabolism, fat oxidation, and so more in that sense. So it helps reducing fat mass and improving glucose tolerance and utilization, also activating oxidative fatty acid metabolism pathways, which is very important for our video to know. And also it can drive up fat oxidation, and you can think about it, it's more of a lipolysis and downstream free fatty acid oxidation. And that is the one side. The other side is the MOTS-C, which is a mitochondrial-derived peptide that influence metabolism and also insulin sensitivity, which can be an energy regulation because it activates AMPK pathway. And through that AMPK pathway activation, MOTS-C might drive more catabolic or energy efficient state. It's not muscle catabolic, but it's a shifting in the fuel of your bodies. It's push the towards the fat oxidation and then potentially it takes us away from the anabolism that we aim for. So I think we are starting to have a more clear picture about the androgens, what they are doing, and the peptides, what they are doing. So to can connect the dots more, and we can have the question about the lipolysis and the anabolism. Which one can gonna win the race with us? So the continuous lipolysis is what I am talking about. It's not only like you're taking one dose of sloop pre-workout once or twice a week, or taking a MOTS-C sparingly. I'm talking about people using those continuously and even multiple times per day. This is the caveat here. So it is a continuous lipolysis environment. So continuous lipolysis environment here from sloop and MOTS-C going to always drive up a lipolytic oxidative metabolic environment and activating AMPK, ERR, and upregulating the fatty acid oxidation and mitochondrial biogenesis. But in environment like that, can the lipolytic drive overpower the potent anabolic state of androgens? Who knows? Or we know, maybe. So do you think that using those can inhibit or suppress your muscle gain, or it can put a ceiling or a limitation on how much muscle you can grow while using those, even if you are eating like 300 grams of protein, 1,000 grams of carb, and doing this and that, and doing like 1 gram of gear or something like that? So the answer is not really one straightforward. So to can answer that, let's go deeper into the pathways, and we can start the first one, which is the AMPK pathway, which is an energy sensing pathway. So it is opposite of the mTOR, which is a growth signaling pathway. Let's start with the AMPK, as it's a persistent lipolytic stimulus. So it's through the fat oxidation or the activation of fat oxidation and mitochondrial demand, it can shift or can elevate the ratio between AMP and ATP, which is locally in the subcellular compartment, can generate signals that can make the AMPK is chronically high, which AMPK phosphorylates or inhibits mTOR C1. It can inhibit that through a regulatory mechanism like TSC2, which is a tumor suppressor gene, and also another gene which is RP2. You can relate that RP2 to mTOR, which, yes, RP2 is a gene that regulates the activity of mTOR, and even more, which is a chronicle suppressor of anabolic signaling. So even if androgens push mTOR high enough, but still pushing the AMPK tune can attenuate how much mTOR C1 gets turned on. And with each stimulus, how that can put a ceiling of the hypertrophy that you are after during the off season. Let's go into another thing, which is insulin sensitivity and also substrate partitioning or utilizing the fuels. So the elevation of free-form fatty acids from increased lipolysis will worsen insulin sensitivity locally in the muscle. Think of lipid intermediates or DEGs, which are decycloglycerols and ceramides. So the insulin plus glucose and the amino acids you deliver post meal can not signal as effective without those peptides. Okay, so with those peptides, it inhibits the anabolic signaling by inhibiting the insulin. And if the insulin signaling and the AKT signaling, what mentioned before, are slightly inhibited, the downstream anabolic signaling gonna also be inhibited or at least reduced. So with the substrate competition or the fuel competition here is, if the muscle is primed to burn fat with the peptide environment, it may downregulate glycolysis, which will reduce resilience on glucose and shift towards mitochondrial oxidation. Okay, so that shift in fuel preferences can alter how effectively you can build muscles. because glucose and glycogen metabolism and insulin fluxes help trigger anabolic cascades. In some cases, also persistent oxidative mood decreases the flexibility to rapidly shift into anabolic glycolytic mood when you flood in insulin plus carbs. Okay, something that apparently most people don't even think about, which is the transcriptional or reprogramming the fiber type and the fiber type adaptation. It's something that was started to be introduced when people started to use something like GW or choline and the chronic ERR in mitochondrial biogenesis environment use and the activation and gradually reprogramming fiber types, and that can induce another gene expression with increasing the mitochondrial density. All these basal enzymes expression, it can favor the endurance and the oxidative phenotype. They also may make muscle less primed for aggressive hypertrophy, which always favors the glycolytic high force, high mTOR fibers. And even with androgens, the muscle is not a blank slate. It's a phenotype that can shift under chronic signaling. Here, as we are saying, it will favor the fibers that works for the endurance over the fibers that works for strength training or under high stress. Okay. Last but not least, the crossover between the stress signaling, which, like persistent lipolytic push might raise mild stress signaling. And here I'm talking about the oxidative stress. So there is accumulation of reaction oxygen species and also from the metabolic flux that we have that increased the NAD turnover and so on, that can also recircuit more PGC1 alpha, SERT, PPAR. All this axis engagement will often can have a crossover with mTOR and may suppress hypertrophic pathways. With all of that in the scene, I think now we are close to see the picture in more clear way, right? So let me rephrase the question again. Can lipolytic peptides overpower androgens? It's a triggering question. I'm sure I'm sure of that. So think about it as blue pill versus red pill. And the blue pill is the classic bodybuilding PED, which are androgens, growth hormone, IGF-1, high food load, and resistance training for sure, balls to the walls. So it's which is a strong, consistent growth, and let's call it as the force A, which is stands for anabolism. In the other hand, with the red pill, we have a continuous lipolytic signal, which comes from the SLUP and MOTS-C. Those lipolytic agents can have an downstream metabolic reprogramming, and maybe you can push the growth hormone in that sense too. So it's a metabolic reprogramming downstream effects of increasing AMPK, all of that. And let's call it as force L, which stands for lipolysis. So as a like logical thinking, if lipolysis as a force L becomes high enough relative to force A, which is anabolism, the net anabolic signaling, which is muscle protein synthesis minus the breakdown, becomes suppressed. So, however, if lipolysis force L is lower than force A, which is anabolism, then the growth still proceeds, but possibly at a reduced efficiency or with a lower ceiling. What do you think now? I think now we can finally answer the questions. It's possible that sufficiently potent continuous lipolytic peptides use could blunt additional gains, especially if it elevates AMPK chronically, which can impair the insulin AKT and also that can repeatedly inhibit mTOR activation window. However, if your androgen load is high enough, that blunt might appear a diminishing returns. So it's not that much, but still, you may still grow, and that growth can be in a slower rate or in a lower efficiency. That can make you use more PED and push the androgen more. So this is why I wanted to drive all the way to reach this point. Again, pointing on a new trend of using high dose, slow, and MOTS-C during the off season to grow more with more energy, losing fat, or reduce the fat accumulation, which can be true. But there is limits. There is limits. Our biology is complex. We can biohack it, yes, but we have also limitation. And this limitation you can still push forward more, but what on what cost? So we are setting ourselves into problems in the future that we don't really know. Peptides use is still new, and yeah, you can have a blood work right now that shows that you are healthy. You can see that you have energy. You can see that you have a lot of energy after the workout. You don't gas out during the workouts or after the workouts. You always have energy, but it's not really studied for long period. And if your blood work right now is good, who knows what is going on inside your body, inside your genes, inside your cell, in a cellular level going forward. So I'm always trying to push the other side of the coin. In my opinion, it's worth thinking about the situational use. If you are in an off season, push the PEDs as you want, as healthy as possible. Push the food as you want, as healthy as possible. Push the training post to the walls as healthy as possible, and help recovery. All of that just to gain the muscles. And when you shift to the prep, you can use whatever you want. You can use all the lipolytic agents. You can use all of this because you can sacrifice a little of size and get on the stage field, right? So I'm talking about it from a situational use and logical thinking more than just following trends. And at the end of the day, it's up to you to decide which way you take. And it was my obligation always to can show you the other side of the coin. So that was our today's video. Hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next time.
Skip scam and scammers. Join me for non-fraudulent science-based coaching services.